Good evening, everybody. It's an absolute delight to be here with all of you on Facebook Live, talking about climate change, the youth and women, and the impact it's going to have on all of us. I hope all of you are safe and well in these unprecedented and unusual times we are all facing. Especially the women, I think the burden of COVID has been pretty significant on them, and of course also on the youth. The uncertainty around academics, etc., has been pretty stressful. So once again, I hope you continue to stay resilient and well. Before I start, I also want to make a mention of the incredible job India, the administration, the Prime Minister have done. The leadership shown in India has been incredible. We are a very densely populated country, so things could have really gone bad. So we've done a good job in containment. And of course, the frontliners who are working to prevent this pandemic from spreading has been pretty significant as well. So I salute all of them, and I salute the nation for showing leadership in these very, very challenging times. So let's first talk about, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about climate change, what's happening in the world, what's happening in India, and, what is it that we should be doing as a country, as the youth and as women. What are the learnings? Is it just climate change or is it an emergency? So let's start with that. I'll talk a little bit about climate change as well. So if you look at, climate change, according to the United Nations, climate change is the defining issue of our time. And we are at a defining moment as far as climate change is concerned. As we continue to pump tons of carbon into the environment, the crisis is only getting aggravated. Nearly 5 years since the Paris Agreement, the climate movement is fragile, and a lot of countries have not really met their commitments. It was shocking when the United States pulled out of the agreement, undermining their commitment, and also in another way showing that, we're not dependent on one nation. But it's just disturbing to see that leaders are not behaving as responsibly as they should with respect to climate. But I personally, my takeaway on that was that we are not dependent on a single nation for climate. I think it's a march which is now become about all of us and not just one of us. So, I think that was really, an insight once United States backed out. Report by Intergovernmental Panel on Climate shows that if temperatures rise by 2 degrees Celsius, more than 70% of the Earth's coastlines will see a rise in the sea levels, right? So that, and given where we are in our country, in India, a large part of our coastline is surrounded by water. And so a lot of cities, especially cities like Bombay and Calcutta, are at severe risk. So that's something we in India need to be cognizant of. Some of you on this live session are probably going to school there and are again concerned about what that means for you, what that means for probably real estate, which is owned by your families, etc. Maybe some of your schools and educational institutions or workplaces are around the coast. I lived in Bombay, and most of the offices are around the coast, and people worry about it. People worry about expensive real estate, which is located there as well. So it's quite a real problem, which we've been, anxious about. Right. We've also seen that, recently there have been a lot of bushfires. There have been a lot of other kind of real threats, which we've been first-hand observers of. And the weather disasters continue to happen, and the frequency of these disasters is also increasing. And people also talk about, I mean, there's solid research which states that the pandemic, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, is not one-off, and we can expect to see many more such pandemics than we have in the past, right? As of now, we are referring to the Spanish flu, etc., which was about 100 years ago. Maybe H1N1, which was at a milder scale. But there's going to be a time where we're going to be talking about these things at a more frequent occurrence, and that's very worrying. Right now, our lives have come to a halt. What's it going to do to our future? Obviously, there are going to be a lot of new normals, but these are things we all worry about. And I think, as far as India is concerned, it has been at the kind of the center of the climate change conversations globally, and there have been many debates around the developing economies and how their energy usage is way more, and they've used a lot of energy to get to where they are. Whereas countries like India, which have just kind of are embarking on that journey, why is it that the roughness and the toughness around the limitations of use are imposed on us now at this point in time? And be it as it is, the important thing is that it's important for nations to be responsible. And so India has to embark on its developmental journey in an accelerated way, but we also have to be cognizant of our carbon footprint. And whatever cost that has, as a responsible country, India should, and India is behaving in a conscientious manner. And as an Indian who has been in a lot of the international platforms where conversations have happened around it, it gives me a lot of pride to see what is being done, and how we are going about the whole energy transition, and globally. So there's also another issue which India kind of is going to face, and that is around the rising temperatures. India is going to be witnessing about 5 degrees increase in temperature, which could potentially really impact our productivity significantly, and could result in a decline in per capita GDP of about 10% by 2050. So I think we risk a lot of these issues if we don't, take some of these issues which relate to climate by their horn and address them collaboratively. And it's not about what you are doing, it's about what all of us together should be doing and can do. So again, just talking about commitment, leadership has an important role to play when it comes to committing to climate. As I said in the beginning of this conversation, that if a country commits and leads the way, we can do a lot, and we can really accelerate our journey. Like in our country, our Prime Minister, we personally at ReNew Power had the privilege of hosting our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. When he was not the Prime Minister, he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, and we had started our first wind farm there, and he was there for the inauguration. I can say with conviction that climate is something which we all have to be sensitized towards. And that if that happens, then your engagement and contribution increases manifold. And, for whatever reason, the Prime Minister at that time, this is now about 7-8 years ago, was extremely sensitive and extremely aware and extremely concerned about renewable energy. His knowledge about renewable energy was enormous. And when he became the Prime Minister, he put renewable energy on the kind of top of the agenda of what his government was going to do and how it was going to go about doing that. So we have India as an example, which is an amazing example, and then we all know what's happening in the United States, which cannot do much good to the global climate change movement. So I wanted to put it on the table. That's important for all of you students on this call to know that leadership is critical at a country level, at a state level, at a company level, at an institutional level. So all of you in your schools and colleges can actually take a significant amount of leadership and lead the way and work towards having an impact. So don't ever underestimate that. So it's not only about top leadership, but it's leadership at an individual level, at an institutional level, at a national level, and at a global level. So it matters, and it's extremely important for us to do our bit when it comes to the climate movement. And I think India's preparedness to transition into a clean energy system is unmatched for a country of its size and level of energy thirst and development needs. A major game changer has been the impact of technological advances, which have dramatically pulled down the per unit cost, making renewables the cheapest form of power there is. So India currently has around 82 gigawatts of installed renewable energy capacity. As some of you may know, ReNew Power is one of the largest renewable energy IPP, and we generate close to 8 gigawatts, over 8 gigawatts of generation and installed capacity. If you were to visit our numbers, our country's numbers in 2014 were 35 gigawatts. So we're seeing more than doubling of our renewable energy capacity, which is pretty significant. And and we have in India another 30 gigawatts in capacity. So we're talking about 110 gigawatts plus of installed renewable energy capacity in India. So lots of things in India to be proud of. And, as the sector grows, I wanted to point out to all of you students who are on this call, on this chat, that when the sector grows, like the way the renewable energy sector is growing in India, that brings opportunities in the job market. And so as you immerse yourself in learning and absorbing more about the sector, don't forget to prepare yourself to work in this field, because there are going to be many opportunities in the renewable energy space. And as we go on, I think the commitment and the need and the emergency for climate change is going to make this a very attractive sector for lots of people to work in. And my personal experience has been that a lot of the millennials and the youngsters want to come and work in the renewable energy space, not because they want to earn a livelihood, but also they feel good about doing something for themselves, the planet. And so it's not only a good career option, but it's just a good area to be in. And so a lot of people find it extremely satisfying to be getting their hands dirty with respect to saving the planet for the next generation. So it's a great career opportunity. So some of you should definitely think about that as well. While renewable energy is going to be critical and important, we can't say that we're not going to be using coal. Coal is going to be used, but we're going to be shifting towards the use of renewable energy, which is quite a big step. And while we're going to be finding many ways to reduce the actual consumption of coal, we also have to find ways to decrease the consumption of power as well. And that's when we will be able to decrease our carbon emissions, which are responsible for climate-related issues as well. Let me now come to two issues which are very important in the climate narrative, in addition to, obviously a lot of other critical issues. But today we're going to talk about how it impacts youth and how it impacts women. Of course, how it impacts women, something I can talk about firsthand because I work a lot with them. You probably know more about how it impacts youth, but I'm going to give it a shot, and I'd love to hear more from all of you, on it as we get into a conversation. So some of you are probably aware that in about 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, at the New York Climate Summit, a young girl called Greta Thunberg, who's a climate activist, grabbed attention when she kind of delivered a speech, really making the world leaders realize that a lot of what they were doing was just talk and no action, right? And, I've seen, and some of you must have seen on social media, shots of her trying to do this, a year before, where there was nobody listening to her, and she was all alone in the streets of New York City. And then within a year, she was, able to gather support, and there were lines of people kind of supporting her and, protesting against governments for inaction, etc. And one of her, speeches, I've got an extract which I wanted to share with some of you. You may or may not have heard it. She said, "This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? But the young people are starting to understand your betrayal, and if you choose to fail us, we will never ever forgive you." Now, these were very, very powerful and hard-hitting words, which shook the world. And I can say I've been associated with the, climate and climate-related activities that, it really brought climate on the agenda of many countries who weren't talking about it, looking at it seriously. And it also resulted in a lot of youth to take up the climate issue at their personal level as well. Right? So some people joined her, some people started their initiatives. So all it takes is one person to mobilize a larger set of people. And I think Greta did that extremely successfully. I think each of us can do that in, our countries, in our states, in our localities, institutions, neighborhoods as well, to engage and sensitize friends and, elders and the government, etc., to start thinking about things, to start engaging with the youth in this whole climate narrative and, conversation. So, so I guess another great person who talked about, preserving the earth for the next generation was from our own land, Mahatma Gandhi, when he said that we have borrowed the earth from future generations and it is our duty to return it to them in good condition. Very powerful words and, and much required. Today there are 1.8 billion people between the ages of 15 and 24. They're the largest generation of youth in history ever. Close to 90% of them live in developing countries like India, where they make up a large proportion of the population. Their numbers are expected to grow between 2015 and 2030 alone. About 1.9 billion young people are projected to turn 15. So obviously we're talking about large numbers, not small numbers. And, as the impact on them and their future becomes greater, it's not going to be possible to do anything which is for real without the engagement of this very important segment. And so I think the youth have realized this and they have plunged in the climate movement head on. And I think that is good news. I think what now we need to do is to ensure that real steps are being taken which are directly correlated with actions resulting in a decrease in carbon contribution to the environment. So we really have to focus on mitigation. And so if all of us can work on initiatives together ourselves and pressurize organizations and institutions and the governments to also work on initiatives where they are pressurizing others to decrease the use of energy, decrease their carbon contribution, I think we would have taken a small step in the right direction. So the power is in all of your hands to do your bit. So climate change and growing anxiety, I mean, needless to say, I've already mentioned that there's a huge amount of anxiety. A lot of teens around the world worry about what's going to happen to their future. It's causing a lot of depression and mental health issues. But, in developing countries, firsthand, I've observed that even people who are extremely poor are concerned about it, but they don't realize that it's related to climate, but the kind of problems they're talking about are climate related. Unfortunately, they do not have the wherewithal to address this issue, and they don't have a voice, they don't have the resources to do anything. And that's something we should all try and address in different ways. By talking to the government to start with, I think would be an important first step. And also as youth, running initiatives where we can engage with them, educate them, and run initiatives which help them understand what is it that can be done to solve these problems would be quite helpful for them. All I can say is that it's good to see that around the world, youth in education, technology, science, etc., are getting engaged and, are speaking up for climate action. I'd urge all of you to do the same. All of you are really equipped to lead this battle, because I have seen that youth have a higher sense of morality. They bring a refreshing perspective. Sometimes people are jaded and I can't think of some of these innovative initiatives and ideas, etc. They have the energy to inject the momentum and the acceleration which is required in this climate emergency which is facing us. They possess a great amount of natural, social, and environmental awareness and ability to convince and influence multiple generations, their parents, their grandparents, and then later on their children and grandchildren. So all in all, we can see that if all of you get sensitized, you have the ability to impact maybe 4 or 5 generations, which is quite powerful. So, there are lots of international movements. All we need to do is to go out there, get acquainted, and contribute whatever we can, to ensure that, that your voice is heard. I think there's a lot out there in social media. I don't need to talk about social media to your generation. You're masters of social media. So there's so much out there. And if you have a good idea, the power is in your hands and your fingertips to go and share it with others. As I said, be it, government, be it international organizations, be it your friends, family, etc. So, we do have the power, courtesy, technology, and hence social media. All I want to say is that it's a good time to get engaged in climate. Climate is critical. And as far as women are concerned, the only one point I want to raise is that women are at the receiving end of climate. They know all the issues which can help improve issues relating to climate. They have solutions, but unfortunately they don't get involved. They're not engaged by various decision makers. It's time for us to engage women and ensure that their voice is heard, because they have the answers to a lot of the problems which are required to make policies and implement these policies. So let's mainstream women, let's engage them in climate dialogues, and let's empower them. We have seen in organizations like Barefoot, etc. Once you engage women, you can actually transform communities and societies. So I'm really hopeful that this narrative of engaging women can grow, so that women can get their voice on the table and solve for some of these problems. That's basically it. I'll take a bit of a pause right now. I'm not sure if people are going to be sharing questions on the screen, but as I conclude, I just want to say that women, children, are, and the youth are extremely important stakeholders to solve for the issues we are and the problems of climate. So, don't give up, stay engaged, and make sure that your voice is heard. And yeah, I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Okay, I don't really see any questions coming up right now, but it was wonderful, that I got this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you. You can get in touch with me, through WOSI. I'll be happy to address any questions, queries on this. But all I want to say is that it's no longer climate change; it is a climate emergency now. So let's come together and do what we can, increase our knowledge, because this is going to be a great sector. It's a promising sector, not only for jobs, but also for education, higher education, for teaching. I think there are going to be a lot of institutes which are going to be set up focusing on climate. So the future is bright, and let's ensure that we get a piece of that. So that's all from my side. Thank you, WOSI, for inviting me for this session, and I'd like to wish you all the very best in the good work you're doing. And it's great for the students that they have an opportunity to listen to some of these questions and some of these important points, and become more aware on climate related issues. All right, thank you. It was a pleasure being here.